Okay.
All right. Okay, it's 6:30. I will call the January 2023 meeting of the Woodstock Economic Development Commission to order. The second item on the agenda is additions or deletions to the agenda. Do I hear anything from anybody? Hearing none, I would assume that the agenda is well as intact. The third item is approval of minutes from December 1st.
Before we go, do we have a quorum?
Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
We
We
do,
have 7.
okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, sorry, just one.
So, thank you. So the third item is approval of minutes from December 1st, 2022.
I will move that we approve the minutes from both December 1st and December 15th, which are posted on the website in the meeting.
So there's a motion. Anybody second it?
Second.
Second, we have a motion and seconded that we approve the minutes from December 1st and December 15th of 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Fourth item, citizens' comments. This is the time of the meeting where anybody can just pop in and voice an opinion or comment. Anybody want to raise their hand? Hello? Apparently not. So the fifth item is old business. We're going to start with the working groups. The first one is the housing group.
Maybe I
and that-
can't,
Wait a minute. And that is going to be combined, as I understand it, with the item 6A, housing applications. So who is going to speak for the housing group? Is that you, Jill?
Yes,
Jill Davies?
so I will speak and Trina will speak.
Yes, Emmy,
Go ahead.
Trina.
And
Yes,
perhaps-
go ahead, please.
so we have one new application to discuss.
Okay.
Discuss that first, and then we want to talk to you about the ideas we've been having for the 2023 application. And we'll talk you through those to give you an opportunity to ask lots of questions.
Okay. And Jill, I have the documents here, so you can just tell me when you want to go through them.
So
Okay,
could
fine.
you start with Trina's piece of the new application?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm here to present Lori Marshall's ADU Workforce Rental Program application. She has applied to the ADU Rental Incentive Program, which is a $10,000 grant. The home itself is located at 569 Lincoln Street. Provided some pictures here. And it is a house with a private entrance to a apartment that's on the back side to the right. It's in need of a lot of work. They've gutted it out. They've been doing some foundation work on it already so that it can be permit ready for rental.
Trina, is this the one we saw previously?
I don't know if, well, you know, Patrick, I think it was in November that the housing group approved this, but we didn't have a December meeting, so it's just now getting presented to the EDC.
That's why I'm recognizing it.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, thank you. So anyway, I've done a site visit and I've taken some pictures of the work that they're doing. It is an existing structure. It's a mother-in-law apartment, and it's been totally gutted. They've been working on the foundation, and she's also applied for the state VHIP program as well. If approved, the ADU program funds for 2022 have been exhausted for the 3 new applicants that we could accept. This is the 3rd one. So here tonight to request approval of the grant for Lori's project. And if you want to scroll down, you can see the other pictures of the work they're doing.
Great, thank you. So as I understand, you want approval of $10,000 to continue this work, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Anybody have any questions? One of the thoughts I have is $10,000 doesn't go very far, you know, when renovating your house. Is that going to complete it? I doubt it. Is it?
Oh, no, no, no. She's
No, I didn't
also,
think so.
yeah, she's applied to the state VHIP program as well, and
Uh-huh.
that could qualify her up to 50,000 with the state. In
Okay.
addition, the state's also released a Healthy Homes Initiative, which could allow, I believe it's up to 30,000 for energy efficient additions in plumbing and heating and that type of thing that she can also apply for.
Right, great. Okay, thanks.
John, did you have a question?
Yeah, two questions. One is, Trina, I assume, because you didn't mention it at all, which I assume that she meets the requirements to rent and that, you know, all of the other various things and so forth. She meets all the
Yes,
requirements.
yes, I apologize. Yes, she meets all of the eligibility requirements. She submitted an application and signed it, and she's aware of the qualified tenant requirements that we have and the rental requirements once the unit is completed.
Yeah, okay.
And she has a tenant sort of lined up, right?
No, actually, yes, Lori does. I believe she may be using a contractor that she's using to actually build it. So it'll be nice to have another contractor in the area.
Any other questions? Okay, so I guess we're ready for a vote.
I make a motion that we approve her application.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the application and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All those opposed? Grant approved.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome. Okay, can get the agenda. up.
Oh, that's John.
So now we're going to move forward to the presentation from the Housing Working Group. There's several of us here tonight. Deborah, Patrick, and Marion work on this committee or a group. Sally is here. Cliff is here. Trina is the housing advisor, and I'm on that group too. So Greg Olmsted is also on the group, but he's not here tonight. So we're going to take you through the results that we've been able to accomplish since we got the grant earlier in 2022 and talk to you about ideas for 2023 and what our thinking is now. And what we'd like to do is have you ask lots of questions so that we can get your thoughts and ideas before we make this into a formal proposal. So next one. So we'll start with what went on in 2022, then we'll go on to 2023. So we were awarded 93,000 in grants in 2022. We had two programs in mind, the ADU Workforce Rental Pilot Program and the Rental Incentive Pilot Program, and to recruit a housing advisor, who is Trina. And in the 10 months since we started, we've created 5 housing units.
Jill, does that include the one we just did?
Yes, we assumed that you were going to approve it, so we counted it.
So 3 ADU and 2 short-term rental, three rental incentives.
3 ADU and 2 rental incentives. And we'll talk to you more about that.
Correct.
So we set out in 2022 with the idea of increasing workforce housing, and we want to continue that in 2023, but we want to do it through both rentals and start exploring home ownership. So next slide. So these are the details of the 5 units we've created so far. So Trina, do you want to go through the details of this?
Yes. So since the pilot began, we've got 3 ADU workforce rental pilots. One is a 1-bedroom that's under construction. We have another one that is a studio that's planned for the spring. The contractor will begin that work then. And then we have the one that I just mentioned, Lori Marshall, to be determined if it's going to be a studio or a 1-bedroom. It depends on the layout. As far as the rental incentive pilot, we were able to obtain 2 properties. for rent to local workers. One has a rent of $1,900. It's for a 3-bedroom, 2-year commitment. And the other is an $800 rent with yard and snow removal that the tenant is providing as well. And it's for a 3-bedroom, 2-year commitment. In addition, Sherry at the Thompson Center has been successful in landing a home share tenant and match with a local resident. So that is moving forward as well.
The next slide. So what this has cost us is 66,000 of the funds, of the $93,000 funds that we received. So we've put 12,000 into startup costs. So that's really Trina's time and attorney fees, really establishing the programs and working out all the details and all the legal details. So that's where about 18% of the money has gone. And then the program costs has been 54,000. That's 44,000 of incentives that we've awarded. Not all that money is spent, but it's committed. And then Trina's time is about 10,000 toward that. And so that gives us a per unit cost of 10,800. Compared to so many other programs, seems reasonable. So we've got 27,000 remaining that's uncommitted that will carry on into our programs in 2023. And then going forwards, what we want to use is a multi-pronged approach to continue to increase these number of housing units. So we've got lots of different programs we'd like to work on, both in rentals, where we want to increase the appeal to property owners, creating reasonably priced year-round rental units for the local workforce. And that will be with existing and a couple of new programs. And then home ownership, we want to introduce programs and support to make it easier for the local workforce to purchase a home with these programs.
Sorry, I'm just going ahead, Jill. If you want to slow me down, let me know.
And really ask questions anytime you want through this as well. So here's the list of current programs that we want to continue on the left side. And we'll talk about each of those. And then on the right side, we've got 6 new programs and services that we want to talk about. With the existing programs, we want to continue them, but they were all pilots. And so we want to improve them based on what we've been learning. So then now we can go through them one by one, and probably that's where you're going to have your questions. Okay, so Trina, do you want to take these?
Sure. So we'd like to continue the ADU workforce rental incentive. The program, just as a reminder, was $10,000 available for design, permitting, or construction. And in return, the ADU is available to rent to a local worker working in Woodstock for 3 years. Currently, there's a minimum 1-year lease and a maximum monthly rent amount, so that the rent is affordable to the workforce here in Woodstock. Some of the enhancements we're talking about are working with the select board and the trustees, planning and zoning, to reduce some of the costs incurred in creating the ADUs, seeing if we can get a zoning permit exemption, and also see if we can get a reduction, actually not a reduction, but I guess I would say a postponement or an abatement of the property taxes for the ADU to the end of the agreement period of 3 years. That's what we are considering.
Why is zoning, a fee exemption, not exemption of the zoning permit? I got it. Okay. And the other question I had was, ADU must be available to rent to a local worker for 3 years. In other words, that worker would have to commit to that location for 3 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
No, just the landlord. The
It's
landlord has to
the
commit
lease.
to renting locally for 3 years,
They-
but it could be 3 different year-long tenants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
it could,
It's
yes.
the lease time.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Before you leave this, sorry.
Go ahead.
Before you leave this one, are there any changes proposed? We don't have to go into all the detail, but are there any changes proposed to the rental amounts, like the rent limits and so forth? Or if there were, you would come back to the EDC with that? Or okay,
So-
it's a
And
detail.
this one seems to be working. So we haven't got
Yes.
changes on this one. It's the next one we want to make changes to because it's not working as well as we think it ought to.
Okay, sorry. Keep going, yeah. Oh, I have to keep going.
Okay, we also want to make some improvements to the rental incentive. And as a reminder, the rental incentive grant is available to someone who wants to put their place into the rental program for 1 year or 2 years to a local worker. Again, it's just kind of the same requirements, and the lease must be for a 1-year minimum. And in return, we would give them the $7,000 for a 2-year. And if it was a 1 year, I believe it was 3,000. So what we want to do is make some enhancements to this. Since we've only been able to achieve 2 rentals out of the 5 that we had set a goal for, we were considering extending the program to include owners of properties that are close to Woodstock, but they must rent it to someone who's employed in Woodstock. There were a couple of applicants that we'd received that were right on the border or close to Woodstock, and we couldn't accept them into the program. So we've seen firsthand that there is interest beyond the Woodstock border. We'd also like to change the incentive amounts to incentivize more than a 1 occupant in a unit. What we've seen is 1 tenant in a larger 3-bedroom place, and we'd like to see more tenants in a larger place. If it has more bedrooms, change the incentive amount based on possibly the number of bedrooms, have that as part of our calculation, if you will, for the grant.
May I ask something, please?
Yeah, explain what that means exactly.
Wait, but Patrick first. I apologize ahead of time. I've been on my feet since 4:30 this morning, and my brain's a little foggy, but and I appreciate your patience. Where it says program, the second one down, 3 grants of up to $7,000 available for property owners to rent a unit that is currently a short-term rental or unused rent for long-term rental. Can you explain that a little bit? I'm sorry to, if I don't grasp it right away, but it's not really clear. Does that mean that a property owner will be given a $7,000 grant for at 3 different years for somebody who can rent that long-term? Is that correct?
Yeah, well, so they will receive the total of the grant is $7,000. So for example, the 2 rental applicants that we had this past year, they both signed up for 2-year leases. So they've got to have a person rent it for 1 year or for 2-year term, depending on what they want to do. As a landlord, that's up to them. But they signed up for a 2-year term to give a local worker a home. So in that case, they do get $7,000, but that's it. It's just $7,000 total.
One time.
And then we break that down over 2 years. And during that time, for example, we received the lease on one of them, so we paid half of it. The other half will be paid in the 2nd year after I do a compliance check to make sure that the tenant is still working in Woodstock.
Right. Okay. So that $7,000, would a tenant have to contribute to that $7,000, or is just a flat grant in addition to the rent that a landlord would receive?
It's a grant in addition to the rent they receive. However, let me mention that the rent is reduced. So it's not the typical market rent that you're seeing right now for Woodstock. So we've capped those so that they're affordable for middle income workforce in Woodstock.
Okay. So for example, if an apartment was available for a family for $1,500 a month, right? How would all this apply? The 7,000, would the landlord get $1,500 a month in addition to $7,000 for 2 years?
So if someone has an apartment and they apply, and did you say it was a 3-bedroom?
Yeah, so say that as an example.
Okay, so as an example, currently the program works, or you want to know what we wanted to do later?
How it works now.
Okay, so currently if someone applies, they want to be part of this rental incentive. They've never rented because we aren't If you're an existing landlord and already renting, then you're not eligible for the program because you're already renting in Woodstock. Our goal is to try to attract additional landlords or parcel homeowners into the program so we can add more rentals into the area, not just circulate the ones that are already out there.
Oh, I get it.
They want to convert short-term renters, wpeople who are doing their places short.
Right.
Yeah.
convert
The
an
hope would be
Airbnb
that the
into long-term.
short-term rental folks would transition over. However, that hasn't happened. But we have ideas on what we can do to work with short-term rental owners and or the town to maybe improve that a little bit.
Right. So if a landlord has a history of having rented in the past to local workers, this would not apply.
Only if they
correct?
rented within the last 12 months. Say they rented a couple of years ago and then they got out of it for whatever
Yeah.
reason, and then they want to get back into it, they could do it
Okay.
now.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate
Hey,
that.
you're welcome. Any other questions, let me know.
Yep.
So I don't think I finished this. So we want to extend the program to properties outside close to Woodstock. And we also want to look at possibly changing the incentive amounts to incentivize more for one occupant in the unit. And we want to review existing lease periods, rent limits, grant amounts, and adjust if we need to. And by that, I mean, as you know, I think even a few of you in this meeting asked about seasonal or more, a shorter term lease than 1 year. So that's something we're going to look into because we want to address your interests in that. But we'd like to know what
May
would work.
I make a slight comment on that specific issue?
Yeah, sure.
My family and I own a cafe here in town, and this past summer, we recruited workers from Colombia, Jamaica, Pakistan, and these were short-term, just summer help. None of this would apply for that, would it? Or would it?
That's what.
Well,
Not
that's
current,
that's not currently,
considered.
Not currently.
but
but that
consider-
is something we want to
That's
look
the
into for
proposal.
next year
For
Sorry,
next year, right?
sorry,
or for this year. Yeah, I forget what year. We're in
I don't
January.
believe, Trina, I don't believe that you have enough information to say whether it would apply or not. Joe, and let me just say
Yeah.
why. Joe, if the cafe was willing to rent, or if you were willing to sign a 1-year lease, even not knowing who you were going to put it in, right? That's really the question. In other words, if you were willing to sign a 1-year lease as a tenant, would a person who rented to the cafe rather than to the person, and the cafe said, we're going to put our employees into it. Right now, we have someone for the summer, but after that, we're going to, we always have turnover, and we need places to put our workers. Would that person qualify for that incentive?
I got it. Okay.
No,
Thank you.
that's a question. I'm not
That's the question.
Yes, they would as it's written. But we have property owners who are interested in doing a shorter lease than 6 months, than 12 months. So we want to explore that side because we believe there are workers who could match that.
as another way. So basically, you're looking at
Yes.
different ways of matching worker need with housing supply. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So in a situation like, say, for example, Joe, then, it'd be interesting to know, what term of lease are you looking at when you bring in those type of seasonal workers? Is it
Right.
3 months, 4 months, 6 months? Things like that.
Typically, it's a seasonal thing.
But seasonal.
It starts
is-
around the end of May and it goes to the end of October or the middle of September, October, depending on the individual, what their commitments are.
So how many months would you say, like a lease? I'm just curious.
That's
3 or 4?
Well, it'll go from like the middle of May and either the middle of September or the middle of October.
Yeah, so that's
6
about a
months.
6-month lease.
Yeah.
Okay. I was
Yeah.
just curious. Thank you.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So we, to that end, kind of like we're talking about, we want to be able to work with short-term rentals or owners to try to see if we can kind of bridge that gap for the workforce.
I just mentioned previously that I've been up since 4:30 and A lot of that day today was talking to different landlords about different population, different prospects. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, me too. Any other questions on this slide? And we'll go to the next if not. Okay, next slide. Now, as far as continuing and improving existing programs, ADU support service. The program here was basically to help simplify building ADUs, answering questions to help those that are wanting to build that. And most of the folks that have done the ADU so far have been self-sufficient and they're kind of doing it on their own. But I get a lot of questions regarding planning and zoning and some other things. So we want to explore that further and really build this out so that we can simplify building the ADU, whether it's permitting questions with planning and zoning, where to go if you need help with state funds like the VHIP program and other things like that, tools, checklists,
Yeah.
things to help guide the landlords or property owners to simplify building the ADU. We also want to build some more resources, local contractors and other professionals that would be on board with partnering with us and being part of this program. Any questions on that one?
And that, Trina, that would be you as an extended role?
Yes.
Okay,
I've kind of
Thank
been
you.
doing it a little bit, but it's been informal, just, but we want to formalize it a little bit more, work more with planning and zoning. And actually create a handbook that would kind of take you through the steps. So yes, expanding my role and creating this in the next few months. Any other questions?
Not for me.
No, we're good.
Okay. Jill, do you want to start with the new stuff or do you want me to continue
Sure, go right
on?
ahead.
I'll do one. Okay, so these are the things that we think we can do to enhance the programs we have and introduce new programs, but these two are not very different. So the first one is the home share incentive is such a simple idea where you take somebody who's already got a home and wouldn't mind having somebody share that home with them in exchange for rent and maybe doing some chores around the house. So existing buildings, it could happen very quickly. In the year that they've had, or nearly a year that they've been running the program, they've only had one participant. So we'd like to add a financial incentive that if people lease to a local worker, then we provide $1,000 a bedroom. Same kind of idea as we already do, but extending the rules a little bit. The second one.
Sorry, before
Sorry.
you go to the second one, do we have any I totally support this idea if we have any indication that financial incentive is something financial is something that would increase the volume, or do we have or is it just a hypothesis, which would be okay with me too? I'm just wondering where we are.
It's just a hypothesis, and it's a way that we can get involved and support them.
Is there any, do we have a sense that the lack of effort and in marketing and of implementing the program is also needed to increase the volume? This seems like such an obvious idea.
I think just putting attention on it in any way will help it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we actually I have a meeting with Sherry next week, so we'll be discussing some of this.
Is there any programs that exist in other communities?
Yes, this is being tried out in Burlington right now. So Burlington Home Share Program has 100 people a year involved in it, showing it is successful, and they've just added an incentive to make it even more successful.
So you said they had 100 now currently?
100 a year.
100 a year.
This is a national program, Patrick.
Okay.
May I add something here and ask Jill? In our environment, in our community, it's Thompson, which is, more of an elderly group and where we're working with. But I believe what we're talking about is putting some effort into you know, expanding that so that it's not just an idea for people who are elderly and need help in a house, that it's just an idea for any age group, you know, and that's where it's been successful in other communities. So
Yes.
I believe that's the shift, is saying, yes, Thompson does it, but we're trying to make it about any age group.
Yes,
Isn't that correct?
yeah, that's what's happening in the north of Vermont.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Right,
Deborah.
very successfui.
Okay, so then the second idea is to take the ADU idea, but so an accessory dwelling unit right now is one building on an existing property. We've also had inquiries from people that want to create 2 units. So that takes you into another category. So we'd be talking about multi-unit housing rental incentives. So here we're going to deliberately encourage property owners to create multi-unit houses, duplexes, triplexes, and again, incentivize them at 10,000 a unit. So we're talking about people building and getting them involved in 10,000 a unit. And hopefully with the amount of money that is in the state budget at the moment, this may link into a state program.
So just to be clear, this is basically exactly the same as the ADU program, except the number of units. The ADU is by definition, because it's a
Yes.
DU, then it's 1. This is anything other than a DU.
Right, right.
Correct.
Otherwise, the same program.
So
Yes.
does this mean it's somebody who's building something from scratch, or is it taking an existing building and turning it into multi, or both?
It can be either.
Either.
We highly support people taking an existing building and dividing it up because it's a lot easier and potentially faster. But they would have to adhere to the same rules as the ADU, where they rent to a local worker for a few years.
Are there any issues with town planning or
So these are programs that we haven't explored completely yet, and we're not ready to start them tomorrow. And that would be one of the main questions. Accessory dwelling units have special permitting processes, and that's why we want to keep it separate.
got
And
it?
Well, so multi-unit homes as well have separate permitting and zoning requirements, and Steve's aware of some of those, and those are some of the challenges that he's working on to eliminate.
Those are much harder. I mean, the ADU is not just special, it's accelerated.
Right. So the work that Trina's talking about, we have many bylaws and ordinances which restrict the building that can go on in our community. And people right now everywhere in the country are reviewing their bylaws and taking out some of the restrictions that are not helpful and are no longer really valid in the way that we live. And Stephen Bauer is the Planning and Zoning Director. He's been working on that Planning Commission, and we should be seeing those changes happen in this year. So that's another one of the pieces of work that the group does with Trina that doesn't fit into any program that is valuable. Any more questions at this stage, or should we go on?
I think you can move forward.
Okay, Trina, do you want to do this one?
Sure. Another area that we would like to explore and introduce in 2023 is landlord employer assistance pilot. So it'd be pilot because this would be new. I get a lot of questions from landlords and regarding how to find a tenant and the tools that they need to find the tenant and things like that. So basically we would just formalize that into a separate or a new program where we would provide more tools to the landlords and kind of increase their comfort, provide any training in renting, because I know there's a lot of gossip out there regarding landlords and tenants and renting, and we want to dismiss that and educate everyone involved in the program so it's successful. And we also have talked about doing tenant screening and credit checks, whether we do that or provide the funds to do that for the landlord. so that would ease the process for them, especially if they're a new landlord. The other piece of this is providing vouchers to be used towards employee housing rental. And we need to do a little bit more on that. Jill, I don't know if you have more details on that we want to share now, or
We're just trying to, in order to make this go further, we need to do some work with employers and to see if this would be valid. But there's other examples of using housing vouchers around the country, and it might be a way for us to reduce the rent of to make it affordable to local workers.
any questions?
It's a subsidy, that the rent would be a subsidy to the tenant or the landlord,
To the employee
to the employee.
is what we're thinking right now, but we have to explore it much more. But so if you think about the rents in our community, many of them have gone over 2,500.
Mhm.
So that unit is outside of a local worker's affordability. But if we gave the employee a voucher to use, then that starts to become more affordable. It's a different way of making bring another unit into the workforce.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah. Obviously, we need to explore it. So, never opposed to exploring things, but I would just be careful because it's essentially an unlimited, I mean, it's really the employer's obligation to pay their employees. It's an unlimited incentive. Every employee would be eligible for it. And
We would not allow that because we couldn't ever afford it. So this one would take a lot more investigation to see if it's still going to be valid by the time you have to put the restraints on to make it affordable as a grant.
And whether it's and whether it's appropriate. I mean, it's the same, and whether it's actually solving.
And you
Yeah,
might want
I'd
to
say it's got a lot of problems with that one. Lots.
so you might want to restrict it to teachers, for example. But something to explore.
Yeah, on the first bullet point, sorry, Trina mentioned looking at whether or not we would be doing the credit checks and screening or simply training people and so forth. Again, I'm not opposed to exploring any of the different options. I do think that helping people to do that the difficulty in doing that task, it's a reasonable hypothesis to say that that's limiting in some way the availability of spaces. But I think the EDC should be extraordinarily cautious about. Well, I
couldn't agree more, because then you fall in the category of responsibility. If there's a mistake made or misjudgment made, then the responsibility would fall on the EDC, not the landlord. And I think the landlord should be responsible.
But I do think that giving them the tool that the tools are not trivial, and finding good ones, and maybe even helping to subsidize the tools, giving training for the tools, things of that sort, having a corporate license that we could give out to 100 people rather than each of them have to pay for it. Those kinds of things that avoid the responsibility sound like a very
right. Exactly.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Keep going.
Yes, please. Cliff, do you want to do this one?
Sure. Okay. So another program that we've thought about doing, or services, if you will, would be the Home Buyer Gateway services. Where we're just, again, providing a single access point resources to help support home buyers with education, where and how to do the forms. And I guess in light of some of the landlord services that we were just talking about, too, this would be a little different, but it's just providing the services, not actually filling out the forms, I believe. So
can I talk a bit more about this one?
Yes.
So there are many, many state programs to help home buyers get started. They're quite complicated. There's multiple sources that you have to go to. So the idea was that Trina could become the one person who knows her way around the system and just get people off the starting block. So not saying that here's what you have to do and these people will definitely give you money, but saying, okay, so you need to go to VHFA and it sounds like you're eligible for that. And this is the one you really want to ask about, and just get people started. Or you need to go talk to Twin Pines Housing. They have this grant that would work with some of your income. And those are the kind of calls I'm fielding right now, just because people don't know where to go, and it takes a while, and you might get people get started on the pathway here.
Any questions? Any further comments?
Jill, that was for your down payment assistant, right?
No, that's for the home buyer gateway.
Home buyer
service.
gateway, okay, that, I just want to make sure.
And then Cliff, do you want to do number 5?
Yeah, I can jump into it briefly. So there's basically, as Jill just mentioned, there's a lot of housing programs already, some of which offer down payment assistance, VHFA being one of them. It's very restrictive. A lot of it's restricted to first-time home buyers, as an example. So to give you a use case of what this pilot would be going for, it's let's say you have 2 people that work at the schools, earn less than 125K, probably significantly less, but are moving here from another market. So they have to sell their home to buy a home here. They can't afford anything in here. They decide not to take those jobs and stay where they are. So these are actually things that are happening in Woodstock right now. And so this program would be designed to, they would have to go through the VHFA, prove that they applied and didn't qualify or qualified for a lesser amount, whatever it is, and then be eligible to receive up to 5% of their down payment. I linked, it's not in here, but we have further details. There's a lot of programs like this that they're typically structured as a 0 interest loan that's forgiven after the person stays in the home for 2 years. So we would just model it after a successful existing program. Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. My one thought on how do you navigate, it's already hard to have a long escrow, especially in a market like Woodstock, a resort town. So how would it work in terms of timing? Is it fast enough where a buyer would still, be in the game with the seller while they're going through this process?
Yeah, it's designed to work with any financing contingency. So essentially, we just want to attach it as behind, a second position to their first mortgage. And then the more we could work with existing banks in Vermont to make it a program like, and it's not in here, but the Federal Credit Union does a lot of work with the VHFA, Vermont Federal Credit Union. And so I think part of it would be working with people that are coming to the area looking for support and housing through the home buyer gateway services, making sure we match them with lenders who understand the program.
Cool.
Any more questions on this page? Should we go to the next one? So the last one we want to talk to you about is that we think it's time to start a housing forum where we can, as the EDC, can facilitate a regular meeting of housing development enthusiasts. So there are lots of people talking about doing different things, and they might be a developer, a builder, an investor, nonprofits, planning and zoning is involved, the grant advisor could be involved. And right now, a lot of people are working separately or in pairs, and it feels like it's time to bring everyone together and start talking about how we can really crack the big nuts and start doing 9 units here and 10 units here, and see how we can make the bigger projects that are really quite scary work with more people being involved who know what they're doing.
Great. Any questions from anybody?
I have a question.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Well, Jill, this is a great idea. You and I've talked about this, and I'm just wondering, this is jumping ahead, so I'm just curious as to your thinking. If we decided to implement what I'll call the multi-ADU program, the $10,000 per unit for someone building a duplex or a triplex, different zoning, therefore it has to be a different program. What if someone came and said, I want to build 30 units?
Right. So
Would we give them 10,000 a unit? I would be in favor of that, but
can we go to the next page?
Yeah.
So take a look at the numbers that we've done for this year, and then let's come back to your question. So we've totaled all these programs up, assuming they could all go forwards, and we've come up with 250,000 as something that we could write a grant application for. So we've expanded the hours of the housing advisor and the compensation level. To be perfectly honest, what Trina's doing is not an admin level job, it's a program manager. So we've put a bit more in there for her. We've put in 6,000 for attorney fees. And then we've, the program costs are just the incentive costs. So ADUs are 70,000 because we want 7 grants at 10,000 a unit. The rental incentives are 3 at 7,000, which is really just going to cost us 3,000 because we've already got some money from 2022. The ADU support is housing advisor time. And then the new programs, 10,000, 40,000, 6,000, housing advisor time, 80,000, and housing advisor time for the forum. So if somebody came to us with a 9-unit proposal and we wanted to support that at 90,000, we'd have to come to you and say, what this is what's going to this could happen, and we could do this. So what we were thinking is we can learn on the multi-unit housing program with 40,000 and be ready for the bigger opportunities.
I have a question. I don't know if you can connect it this or not, but there's a lot of discussion statewide, federal-wise about affordable housing and housing for people who need it. Has that ever been approached or looked at, or is anything that on a state or federal level that you can tap into for any of this?
So
See what I'm getting at, Joe?
yes, a good example of that is the down payment assistant pilot. So we would not compete with any state programs. And in fact, we would insist that somebody tries for one of the state programs first, and then we will fill in the gap. And what we're doing in all of these programs is filling in the gaps. So the ADU workforce rental incentive, the state is as Trina talked about, the state is providing a lot of money to build ADUs, and ours is complementary. And in this case can be additional to make it really happen. And the way it's worked is that people have come to us first, and then we funneled them into the state program so that people can get the maximum value out of those programs.
Great.
So we watch them all the time, and very careful not to be duplicative.
Yeah, that's good.
And in fact, Jill, 2 of your programs, two of the ADU people, at least 2 of them that I know of, are doing the state as well as your grant.
All 3 of them are.
Oh, all 3 of them. Okay, great, even better.
Thank you.
Todd?
Well, I think you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah.
You really are. It's obviously a lot of work, a lot of time, and you should be complimented. At least I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Todd has a question, and then John.
Yeah, just like a point, as I'm a landlord in multiple states now, that the biggest problem I see in Vermont is in terms of rent. So like if you were like, oh, I don't qualify for this program, but I wish I did. We talked about this when you guys started it with the rules, but the cost of energy in the winter for heating the building, like for my 2 apartments, it's $3,000. So is there something, Trina, that you can like put in there in your, education pack or whatever? Because if a landlord it's about dollars and cents and profit and loss, right? So to help a landlord do the right thing, if there's other ways they can see to save as well, that might help them tag on your incentives. So if I got the knowledge that I can get 7,000 for 2 years, but also Green Mountain Power has this 35% rebate, and I didn't know about it, and you sort of helped me with that, then that might be enough to move the needle, right? So I'm just sort of
Yes.
thinking about what costs the most money for me in my building, and it's honestly, it's to heat it.
That's a really good idea, and that and
It
we could
is.
do that, and then hopefully the 7,000 that we give you could be directed toward energy improvements and insulation, and we could get you involved with Sustainable Woodstock, who do an insulation program, and they know all about all the different programs. So, I mean, the more people that you bring into this family, the more that you can connect them to all the different things that are happening.
And Todd, I'll check into that Healthy Homes and send you the information on that as well, because you could
I have it. I'm just thinking about I'm all
Yeah.
deep. I'm deep in, but you know what? I'll take it though. Maybe there's something.
the
I will take
Healthy
it.
Homes. Yeah, anywhere we can find $1, we're gonna find it. So we're
Yeah.
gonna.
Did you guys ever know that a 200-year-old building has really bad insulation?
Imagine that.
John, do you want to do your question?
Yeah, this is really a comment for next time if we, as you think about refining this and taking feedback and so forth. The cost per unit of 10,800, which is after you take the fixed costs, that seems to me to be a reasonable metric and one that we have shown that we can achieve. It's really $11,000 per unit. A third of this cost is creating capacity at $20,000 a unit. And I don't see the additional economic impact of that. I think there's a societal impact, but not an economic impact. And so I would think about how to justify, I would think about the mix. I would think about the cost per unit. And why if we think that there's more demand for 10,000 for units that we can incent at 10,000, why we should be starting to incent them at 20,000 until we run out of demand at 10,000.
Are you thinking about the down payment program?
Yeah, I think that the down payment program, I don't see a reason. In other words, if instead of 80,000 for down payment to get 4 units, we said let's put 80,000 into multi-unit housing and get 8 units. I can't see why we wouldn't want to do that unless we thought unless we got to the end of demand. There is no more demand for $10,000.
Because John, you're dividing that 20,000 over more years. The benefit extends over multiple years.
The
Yeah, but
benefit
John
extends
says-
over multiple years for the other one also. You're getting the
it's
unit
just
bill.
Yeah, but you're only getting 4 units.
One at a time, one at a time. Go ahead, Marion.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The difference is, I think, John, is because it's only 4 units versus 10 units.
No,
He's talking about the down payment for the home.
Right, but he wants to take that, John, if I understand you correctly, you're saying, take that 80,000 and put it into ADUs.
can I answer the question?
Yes, please do.
Please do.
The ADU grant is a $10,000 grant, and in exchange for that, we get a rental unit for 3 years.
What?
The 20,000 payment is a home as long as the home is owned.
Yeah, that's both. What you said is correct, but not complete.
Okay.
What we get for 10,000 is a new housing unit created forever, for as long as it's created, and a guarantee that it will be rented to the workforce for 3 years. What we get for $20,000 is actually not anything new created, but we are guaranteed that it will be used and so forth. And so I just think I just think we need to be considering, we're actually not creating any new units with the down payment assistance. We're not increasing supply. We're increasing availability to a segment. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying that I think that we are finally tonight, as soon as Patrick makes his presentation, we have finally reached what for me was the objective of the next phase of EDC, which is having more things to spend money on, good things, than we have money to spend. And so that now is going to require us, because we can't afford to do this and Patrick's proposal and the childcare thing. We don't have enough money. This is fantastic. This is not bad. All of these ideas are great, and they all do economic value. But once we get into a place where funding is our constraint, which it is now, we then have to start to think about optimizing what the best way to do that. And I think in that context, we should just be thinking about the pros and cons of the down payment program. They're different. I do agree that there's a guarantee for a longer impact. So just take that into account as we as we come, as we consider it. That's
Okay,
all.
Larry, you got something to say, Larry?
Yeah, it's not quite as erudite as what John was talking about. I'm on the same subject, the down payment assistance. And just when you presumably are coming back to us, I'd like to see some detailed criteria as to who would be eligible for this. I think it's a little trickier subject than the other programs you have. This is all great stuff. But I think you have to, I would like to see some specific criteria with that.
Thank you. Deborah?
Yeah, I just want to point out something. John, yes, I am in agreement with you. It's fantastic that we're getting all of these big ideas and big opportunities. But I also want to point out that I'm not so sure it's exactly correct that we don't have enough money for both, in the sense that this program isn't going to all be spent in 1 year. It's similar to what happened with the marketing that was approved before, where it was in several years of the 1% coming to the EDC. So, in fact, we might, look at the dollars and say, no, we can commit X dollars this year and X dollars next year to make sure that we can fund this entire project.
We'd still have to, I still think it's worth justifying why we would choose to create a fewer number of units with different characteristics rather than more units with different characteristics.
I understand. I'm just
It's
saying
taxpayer money.
dollar wise, it could be a 2-year commitment as opposed to coming out of one space.
Yeah, and I wonder if my own thought, Deborah, is I'm wondering if it's wise to commit money that we really haven't got yet. In other words, commit next year's revenues without them really being here yet. I mean, things can happen.
Yes, and we've already done it before. We did it with marketing.
Yep.
And
Yep.
similar to the childcare issue, the money that we've committed, it doesn't actually go out until things actually happen, right? That you need to have the teacher come in, you need to up the amount of people before they, students in before they get their next piece of funding.
that's a good
There's
point.
some fluidity to how the funding goes out. And I think that that's just, it's something to consider as we consider.
Okay.
Deborah, I'd like to just correct one thing you said. The marketing budget wasn't future money. It was past money that hadn't been used.
Huh, okay.
Just we used past money plus this year's money. We didn't spend money that didn't exist.
Okay.
No,
So
well, I'm not
let's
asking you to
continue on
spend
with the
money that
housing if
didn't
we can.
exist. That's not what I'm saying.
No,
That
I
is
understand.
certainly not
I
I'm
understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
It's
and I don't
budgeting.
disagree.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So let's continue on with the housing, Jill.
So we're done. Well, Todd, do you have a question related to this?
Just really quickly. I think just to button this up philosophically, we should be hearing everything, no matter how much it might cost, that could be a benefit to the town. So we should support all these until we need to get into the nitty gritty and hear everything. And I think to John's point, I agree that new housing is better than recycling old housing. So I'd also like to see more in that as we move forward. But I'm up for all these ideas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for all your feedback. And we'll get ready to go to the next stage now, which is writing the application so that we can secure more funds for the programs we want to carry on with, secure trainers services for the year, and secure some funds so we can keep detailing all these other programs.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Great job, guys.
Yeah,
Great
thank
job. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next agenda. Next agenda, childcare. My understanding is we're going to forego any discussion on that tonight because of the upcoming select board meeting on the 17th. And then
There's no new news.
What?
No new news. No new news on childcare.
Okay.
Holding back.
And let's go to marketing. Patrick, take it away.
Okay, John, thank you. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take you through sort of what we achieved this year, the results that we got, and the impact that we've made from an economic development standpoint. And Charles from Class 4 is going to take us through that. And then at the end, I'm going to take us through sort of what we'd like to propose for the next budget, that we'd like to basically go over this now, have you guys ask questions, and then vote on approving a budget for marketing in February. So this way we have time, you guys can ask me questions, we can ask questions here, and we can give you more detail. So John, if you can take us to the next page, and I'm gonna let Charles take over.
I'll give you one of these mics.
Yeah, here.
Yeah.
Look, I'll just pop at the top of the table. That'll be
Yeah.
used over here. All right, so those of you that don't know me, I'm Charles. I work with Class 4 and Patrick along with the rest of the marketing committee. We started working with the team here in August of 2021, and we launched our program in 22. Before we get going, again, like Patrick mentioned, we're going to cover a few, basic performance notes of the program, along with the allocation request from this coming year. To start with, though, I just want to kind of phrase this so we all understand exactly what we're talking about. I would encourage the EDC to look at marketing really as more of a baseline cost of doing business rather than an initiative. We've captured a fairly sizable amount of data to suggest that it's really a necessity if we plan to nurture and engage the next generation of visitors, residents, business owners in the town. And as we get into this presentation, we'll show you some data to corroborate that, a little bit more background. Before we even got started with this presentation, this has actually gone through several rounds. I've worked with Patrick and the rest of the team. The initial allocation request was around $200,000. That isn't money that sits in my firm's pocket. That's just spread out across all the stakeholders that manage this program. And we've actually brought that number significantly lower. In fact, we are looking at a 20% decrease in overall marketing spend from the pilot program of 2022. So it's a fairly sizable decrease, and we've done our best to sharpen the pencil, eliminate the components of the program which had a little bit of bloat, which weren't performing as well as we had hoped, and put additional dollars behind parts of the program that actually are driving an economic impact, and truthfully that serve many of the other goals from other groups on the EDC. So we'll get into that along the way.
And that's 20% of the complete marketing budget, not just what we did for that we approved last year, but it also includes social media coordinator, maintenance on the website and things like that. So we're looking at this budget not as 4 or 5 different grants, which has been done in the past. We're looking at this as one grant. So we're going to be cutting this cost by 20% across all of those grants.
Yeah, that's right, Patrick. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about the consolidation as we dig a little deeper. To start out with, this part of the presentation is really just a background and providing you with some context for where these numbers came from. To start with, my team asked the question here that you can see, and that's how can Woodstock remain relevant in a travel and tourism industry which is pivoting entirely to the digital space? There's a certain part of our audience, really between 20 and 30%, which already actually has entirely pivoted into that space. And so as that core audience ages beyond marketing, the people who live here, the people who are coming here, how does Woodstock activate the next generation of tourists, new community members, people who will open businesses in town, and those who live, work, and discover entirely online? Our aspirational goals, this is really what drives the program.
Next slide, John.
And so there's really a 2-part goal, right? The first is to position Woodstock as the quintessential New England lifestyle destination in the digital space. And the second piece of this is really future-proofing the town fully self-sustainable from a digital standpoint. That's finding, nurturing, and activating a qualified audience that is 100% owned by the town. That means that our opportunity to communicate with this audience doesn't exist from the moment they enter the town to the moment they leave. It exists 24/7 wherever they live. And that's really the fundamental sort of foundation of this program. The second piece is providing free native marketing support for Woodstock's economic engine. That's locally. So that's our businesses, our community initiatives, our events. We've built a qualified lead list that numbers in, it's not a 3,000-4,000 person lead list. It's a 20,000+ person lead list that is entirely qualified. And that's a resource that we hope to leverage to support events in town, initiatives that are both town sponsored and privately sponsored that sort of fit into the realm of economic development. That could be something like, a festival here, or even, Bookstock on the Green. And then finally, communicate directly with our visitors and new audiences. And that eliminates the need to rely exclusively on endemic and organic paid press. We know that the majority of traffic of digital engagements to Woodstock in the past have been a result of either paid programs, actually primarily no-cost programs, where Woodstock, the town, has been featured. The experiences around Woodstock have been featured, and that results in growth and influx of tourists here in the village.
And if remember, they did the PR program, which was very difficult to measure whether there was really any result from that.
That's right. So, John, you can jump to the next slide. So in 2022, when we started the program, these were our focus areas, really just two focus areas. The first, on the content side of things, developing a content pool of assets to support the program. Part of the 2023 allocation request, this initiative will be actually delivering those assets to businesses, making them available to the general public, but those were captured successfully over 12 production days here in town. And really the second piece of this is the digital marketing program, which was reviewed in August. There's a lot more detail. We're going to cover very high level metrics today, but it's really a 5-step scalable process. And I want to take a moment to describe that process so that we're all talking about this really from the same perspective. We all understand what's happening here. So this process, again, it's a closed loop, and it's scalable so that as we see growth in any one of the segments we'll cover in a moment, we can adapt. And we can change our message to communicate with different groups, whether that's an audience that we're hoping to attract to live here, business owners who we're hoping to attract and grow businesses here, individuals who we think will come to an event, we already know they're interested, or just a general tourism focus. We have the ability through this framework to talk to all of them. And so the first step is to understand the visitor journey. We spent about half of last year doing a fairly sizable amount of market research and building out segments, 4 core segments actually, that really define who comes to Woodstock, why they're coming to Woodstock, and what they do here while they're in Woodstock. The second piece is to attract those new prospects. That's the digital advertising. That's taking our content that we created, taking our story, and putting it in front of audiences which we think, based on research, will either engage with the town digitally or eventually convert and visit the village. And the third piece is capturing those prospects. So at this point, what we're doing is we're taking, you've probably heard the term third-party data. That's just general web data. That's who you are on the internet. We're taking that third-party data and we're converting it into first-party data. And that's important here because once it's converted to first-party data, we have the ability to communicate directly with those prospects. They're no longer floating around in the world, and they have this limited opportunity to engage with us, through a news source or, in town while they're here. We can talk to them whenever we want. So it puts us in control of that audience versus putting them in control of when to come to Woodstock. And then beyond that, we nurture them. And that's the unpaid advertising. That's the message, that's the stories, that's the communication that takes place on a monthly basis. It falls into 2 categories. There's a fairly complex automation program, which sort of gives this initial impression of Woodstock for every single prospect that's seasonal and based on their segment. And then there's an organic component of this where we're sending, think of this as your typical town newsletter. It goes out on a monthly basis. It details events. In the future, as part of 2023, what we hope to do is really establish that resource as an opportunity for any event business in the town meeting certain criteria to activate themselves.
Think of that as somebody's running an event and we can put them in the newsletter the month before it happens to help promote people to know, hey, this thing's going like TEDx or the Bookstock. Thank you. That was the one.
Yeah, but those are both great examples. TEDx or Bookstock, for example, a ticketed event. What we're doing is we're placing that event immediately on day one in front of a large volume, a large audience, which is qualified already and already has, outperformed in terms of engagement. But beyond that, this applies to businesses as well. So imagine you're, Vermont Eclectic, the t-shirt business here in town, okay, and you own a business that's really, sort of a retail brick and mortar environment. But you also have a limited e-commerce component. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Either way, what we can do is do a profile on that business, Vermont Eclectic, promote that through the blog, promote that at no cost through our organic email. And suddenly we're putting that product, that business, immediately in front of 20,000 plus qualified prospects as well, who will buy through the e-commerce funnel. So we're taking our audience and we're actually feeding it into all of the businesses as well, because once they buy from Vermont Eclectic, they're now in Vermont Eclectic's business and they can keep buying from Vermont Eclectic. And so through this, we can begin to nurture the businesses that already exist in the town and give them more control and more power in the digital space as well. So it has this sort of auxiliary benefit. And that's really what the activation, the final component of this program is. You know, before I jump on to the next slide, it's important to note that this does exist in a closed loop, because the more activation we're able to complete within the owned audience, the better our targeting and algorithm gets at the top of the funnel. And without going into too much detail, we're basically making an educated guess at the top of funnel based on market research. And we don't actually know if these audiences will convert. Some of them do, some of them don't. But the ones that do give us data on what works. And those signals, whether that's their income, whether that's their zip code, whether that's their interests, their core buying behaviors, allow us to find more audiences that match those buying behaviors. So naturally, over time, the program is self-optimizing to become more and more effective. And you can go to the next slide, John.
Before we go ahead, can I just ask a quick question? The plan was, when we extended the budget through the end of February, the plan was to make sure that we got a full 4 seasons for the digital content pool. Did we achieve that?
Well, 3 seasons, because we haven't been through a stick season, mud season type of scenario yet. So that's planned for the next one that we'll know. What we did do is we've got the 3 major seasons: summer, foliage, and winter.
Okay. All right. But okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's right. So when I sort of mentioned that, right, that 5-step process previously: understand, attract, capture, nurture, and activate. This is kind of how it plots out in a funnel. So at the top of the funnel, right, we're attracting. That's why do visitors come to Woodstock, understanding that and what those signals mean, from where, why are they here. We're taking that creative, that relevant creative, and we've actually partnered with a couple select local businesses in the hospitality space to offer incentives. We're taking that and we're really pushing that at these audiences, hoping they come to the website. That's kind of our first touch point. And then that segmented creative drives that audience into interest-driven and value-driven prospects. So we cut them out in between. And we have creative that we're pushing at interest-driven prospects and value-driven prospects. For example, if you fall into that sort of secondary category, you may see an incentive that says, listen, engage with Woodstock, take these steps, and you might win a free night stay at the Woodstock Inn or the Blue Horse Inn. If you fall into sort of the interest-driven demo, we're actually starting with those segments right away. We say, listen, we know you like outdoor biking, outdoor activities. So we're going to lead with creative. We're going to lead with messaging, which shows that type of content. And then in the middle here, this orange piece, we're capturing them when they land on the website. And then at the bottom, we're communicating directly with the lead. So there's an automation component that provides this unique introduction over the course of several weeks. And that's based on qualification data you provided. Look, if you said, I like outdoor activities, I like biking, it's the summer, and you sign up, you're going to receive an introduction to Woodstock that is built for people who like outdoor activities in the summertime. You're going to see biking, you might see some fly fishing, you might see all sorts of outdoor activities. The food and shopping segment doesn't see those activities. They can still access them, but what we're really pushing there is the opportunities for food and shopping in Woodstock, which admittedly in the past season were a challenge. And then beyond that, there's an organic messaging, and that's the visibility that comes to TEDx, to Bookstock, to Flurry, events that we promote organically through this program. And we can do that at no cost in 2023 to those businesses. The next slide you'll see really just explains that funnel, in terms of pictures. You are probably familiar with the images on the left. That's an example of a top of funnel advertising. This happens to be in Facebook. We have ads outside of Facebook as well, in the Instagram as well, on social stories, etc. That center image is the lead magnet. If you navigate right now on your computer to Woodstock's town website, not the village website, you'll see something similar, an incentive and there's a test here where we A/B test different incentives to see what works better for different audiences. And then on the right-hand side, you see, just an image of just one part of a multi-part flow. This is for the incentive-driven audience. They receive this email message that says, listen, you've entered. And then over the next few weeks, they're going to receive information to back that incentive up. You've won the incentive, or you're entered for the incentive. Now come to Woodstock. Now visit. And again, what we're solving for here is the 99.9% of this audience which doesn't win. We're using that 0.1% of the audience that does to bring the rest. And that's worked pretty well in terms of engagement, even after the incentive period is closed. So to recap, John, you can jump to the next slide. Our goal was to build and deploy this framework to communicate directly with prospect visitors, exposing Woodstock, right, and events to new audiences. We've defined these 4 core visitor segments, and we've built ads to target those audiences. We've launched a seasonal program to grow and nurture the qualified owned lead list. We've captured and evaluated an absolutely enormous amount of data and really looked to understand what visitors are trying to find here and the best channels to activate those visitors. And then finally, we've defined the KPIs, the performance indicators, to really highlight what economic success looks like for this program. How do we know if it's working? Is it working in the ways that we want? Are these just numbers on a page, or do they have actual outcomes attached? So at this point, I'm going to jump into the reporting section. I was asked by the marketing committee to keep this really as high level can possibly be.
Trust me, he can get really deep in the weeds.
So my hope here is just to keep this, again, very top level. Part of our program was also delivering interactive dashboard, which exists in real time. It's accessible by the marketing team here in Woodstock with all of the KPIs, all of the data that we've captured. And we've actually all gone ahead and integrated historical data too. So we can benchmark, for example, 2022 performance versus, or even we could benchmark, for example, the first 5 days of 2023 versus the first 5 days of 2014 or 2018. So this sort of all-inclusive dashboard gives us a lot of control to understand what these numbers mean. But big picture, top of funnel, we've created about 1.3 million impressions within these audiences that we've built market research around. There's about 92,000 ad engagements and 320 unique individual discussion threads on Meta platforms, on Facebook and Instagram specifically. We've seen about 6,000 reactions, about 550 shares, and most importantly, a cost per click of 18 cents. It really is, that's an average of all these campaigns. Our best cost per clicks are around 5 cents. And so what this really looks like is our ability to drive traffic into the funnel that supports all of the owned audience, all of the bottom of funnel initiatives that I mentioned. So the cost per click is really, think about that as how much it costs to get someone to engage with our town, and eventually how much it costs to get someone to visit our town. In terms of the performance reporting, again, top of funnel, very basic. Our qualification data is based on age, location, engagement. We're talking to the top 10% of income earners in this market only. Their core interest is tourism. Their core behavior is frequent travelers. So the only individuals we're actually targeting here are individuals who regularly travel, regularly spend money, and exist at the top 10% of the income bracket. That digital targeted size is 4.9 to 5.8 million. There is a range because what we're looking at here is really just a small collection of the number of signals we actually use to evaluate this. And because of the volume of those signals, we're not able to be precise. But this also means that we're not really in a situation where we're going to outgrow this audience anytime soon, anytime within the next decade, for example, at the current spend. If you were saying, listen, we want to just talk to everyone and you wanted to spend $150,000 a month, that would be a different conversation. But the point is there's a huge amount of supply here. So we have a lot of opportunity to grow.
Put this in a sentence. We're taking high net worth people who have money to spend, who like to travel, and having them come to Woodstock and spend their money here instead of somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right. And so in terms of the website performance, there's a couple slides that we're going to talk about, looking at this from different lenses. Overall, our traffic for 22 is actually a 21% growth over the 2021 travel revenge year. Yeah. So while that number may not seem massive, it's actually a fairly impactful number. We saw some of the highest performance we've seen in years in 2021, entirely organically driven. And our organic number for 2022 is actually significantly lower. And so as a result of this program, we've been able to grow spend fairly dramatically. You can see on the right an example of the returning visitors versus new visitors. And so not only are we bringing more new visitors, new eyeballs into the Woodstock environment than old ones, we're actually increasing the difference between 2020, 2021 and 2021 and 22, meaning the range of new visitors is increasing, that ratio.
And which is pretty crazy when you think about 2021, because it was a crazy revenge year. We had so many people here, everyone's going to the websites, and we've actually beat that this year.
Yeah,
I have a question.
yeah.
Have you been able to track travelers' experience post visit?
See, that's a great question, Joe. So this framework, this program overall, think about it as a framework. We can use it for a
I mean,
huge.
the reason I asked that question,
Yeah.
maybe the information that the business community and the community as a whole can use to improve
Yeah.
and make the visit more enjoyable.
No, like I said, it's a great question. It's actually been discussed numerous times. The answer is yes. It has not been implemented. So our scope for the last year was to build the program. The program launched in May, at the end of May, actually. So it's really, we're looking at 7 months of data here. But you've built this framework, and within that framework, we have an audience. So audience over here, framework over here. What we can do is start to connect all of these objectives with the audience, meaning we could tell the framework, we could build a program that very simply says, after you visit, how was your experience? It has not been done yet, but it's part of the proposal you'll actually see here tonight for 2023, because we want to understand, question number 1, did you visit Woodstock in 2022? Question number 2, do you plan to in 23? And then based on that data, we develop a list of people that visited, and we send the list.
So if this is approved tonight, right, when would that be implemented? And when would you start learning about their experience here?
Well, if this were approved tonight, this is something that probably takes about 60 days to implement overall. So feasibly, you'd start to see that performance come through in March.
So how do you go about getting that information?
Yeah.
You outright ask the people, or is there a questionnaire?
There's 2 steps. The first step we would need to take is to evaluate prospects who actually visited. So we take the list overall, all of those segments, and we say, did you visit in 2022? Do you plan to visit in 23? Based on those response, we can tell the program to send a questionnaire that says, how was your experience? On a 1 to 5 scale, rate all of these 6 items. Then we would take that data and display it in a dashboard. So access to food, for example, what was the experience? I would imagine a 2, long lines, outdoor experience. And so we can start to look at all of this information contextually. We can't do that until we have the framework, and that's what we've built. And so now we suddenly have the ability to use this program to grow business, to support events, to help people move here. There's all these other uses because we have an
So
audience.
Charlie, what you're saying is by the spring, you should be able to garner this information. Is that correct?
Say it again, Joe?
I said by the spring, you should be able to garner some of this information.
Garner, yes, that's correct. Absolutely.
Look at it this way, what we built right now is the foundation. That's a window. So now we're putting the windows in to be able to look at people and decide what, how we need to do it and give access to business.
Doesn't he?
What was that?
Go ahead.
But you're right. Patrick's absolutely right. It is a window. And so within those windows, look, the sky's the limit. I mean, how much money do we want to spend? We've talked about so many incredible ideas. Part of one of the initiatives that we were talking about is how to increase chamber membership, for example, to give Beth and her team more operating funds. So allowing, businesses to leverage some of the resources in this framework. And by doing that, they would have to be chamber members. So there are all sorts of different initiatives, and I believe there's 6 in this presentation that we sort of highlighted, but there are a number of other ones. So we'll get to that in actually just a moment here. Back to the reporting, bottom of funnel. This is our owned audience growth. Between 2017 and 2021, the town of Woodstock averaged 51 engaged prospects per month. That's the gross number. So 51 new engaged prospects per month. For a total of 3,000 captured prospects. Currently, we put about that number of prospects into the funnel per month. So we've gone from 51 monthly average to around 2,638 monthly average, peaking over 3,000. and in our slower months, you know, a little bit under 2,500.
Charles,
And this is,
I think you misspoke. You said you put that number in per month. I think you meant you put that number in every 12 hours.
no, that's per month, John. So 51 was the average monthly increase between 2017 and 2021. 2,638 is the average monthly increase in 22 alone.
Right. And so you put in 50 every 12 hours rather than every month.
Oh, I understand. I understand what you're saying.
You said you, anyway, I think you got it.
I think I get your joke.
No. I thought you I think maybe I misunderstood. Anyway, I just want to make the point that
I think, John, I think they just want to know if you were paying attention.
To put this really simple, we started with 3,000 names that they took 5 years to get. In 7 months, we added enough names to bring us to 18,000 plus. And we're continually adding that. And the nice thing about this is that will continue to grow and we'll continue to have more names to talk to.
21,000 plus.
Yeah, that's correct, John. So you can see at the bottom under the 22 column, the growth in the past 7 months alone. So we've been able to substantially grow our own audience, and that opens the doors for all of those windows, all of those opportunities, which we're talking about in 23. We can jump to the next slide. So right now, what we're looking at again is bottom of funnel performance. If you work at all in the industry, you know, I think these numbers are probably more impactful than otherwise. The industry benchmark for tourism, travel, and leisure is about 20% open rate and a click-through rate of about 1.4. In our flows, this is the automation that introduces a prospect to Woodstock. Its job is to really nurture someone who might be interested, who's self-qualified, but who may not actually convert. We're seeing a 55% average open rate and a 6.35 click-through rate, which is substantial. That's a significant number. If we were in the e-commerce space, you know, we'd be buying an island in the Pacific somewhere. On the organic,
Charlie, this is all great information. It really is. And but what this says to me is what the work you're doing right now is primarily to get them here. And, you know, to do whatever they want to do and what they like doing, but that's why we want to get them here. I really feel, this is my own personal opinion, the most important amount of information you get is how did you like it when you were here? And what has to be done?
Yeah.
How can we improve? How can we get better so that their experience is great when they, you know, when they're here and when they leave? I think that's the most important kind of information.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you slightly, and only slightly. What you're saying is absolutely right. We need to know what their experience is, but we got to get them here.
You got to get them here, sure,
Ask
exactly.
them that experience,
Right.
and we have to get them here in a way we can then communicate to them. So your idea of asking those questions and sending out a survey or whatever is absolutely necessary, and what we definitely want to do, because it's going to all it's going to do is improve, as you said, improve the experience and give us the tools we need to know what to improve.
And
Yeah.
almost more, I think, what they've done so far is figure out who those people are, right? So that now we have back and forth communication so that we know who to ask the questions of. That's what we've collected, is like, we filled the room with people. Now we can talk to them.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, get him here is really, in my opinion, it's a two-part solution or a two-part process. Get him here. You're right, Patrick. Gotta get him here. But you know what? You want them to come back, and you want them to, when they leave, they talk to the guy next door and say, you know, we were just in Woodstock, and what a great town. We had a great time. It was a great restaurant, a lot of fun, blah, 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 blah. That, I think, is just as important, maybe even more so, than just getting him here.
I would agree, Joe. That's, you know, in e-commerce, we talk about, you know, the retention rate, right? That's what you're describing here. Look, this slide we're looking at right now, we can really boil this down into a one-liner, and that says people are listening to what we have to say. That's what this tells us. The purpose of these metrics here tonight on this specific slide are to say, look, we made some educated guesses. We built some audiences that we thought were qualified. And what we're seeing is that they're listening to us. They are listening to what we have to say. So if we say, look, if we can apply this to any resource we want, whether that's business development, whether that's event promotion, you name it, the audience is engaged, it's listening. Now, it doesn't necessarily always look this way. Look, we could run a contest and have everyone under the moon sign up and say, look, I'd love to win a free night at the Woodstock Inn. I'd love to go stay at the Blue Horse Inn. Woodstock sounds cool. But if they don't win, they may not listen to us anymore. They may not engage with us anymore. What we're seeing is that the audience continues to engage month after month after month to what we have to say, regardless of the incentive. And that tells us that we're talking to the right people. So Joe, you're right. It's a process. And right now we built the foundation. Now we've built the audience. Now we can start to talk to the audience and use it how we want. And that's how the purpose of the marketing committee will change. From, okay, how do we do this to how do we leverage this because we already have it.
Exactly. And while we continually build the audience. John, you have a question?
Yeah, well, I just have a comment. It's 8 o'clock. We have 2 more items on the agenda. We have to get to the TEDx one. So
Okay.
I just want to give you that.
Yeah, I can jump through this quickly.
Yeah,
John.
I think John's saying is kick it up a notch.
Yeah, I can do that. So this slide is really just growth per segment. These are the 4 core segments, food and shopping being the highest one of those, family, arts and culture, outdoor activity, following closely. There some other quick, just relevant information on that slide that I'll point out. The primary audience age in Woodstock has shifted dramatically in terms of engagements as a result of this program. It's not represented here, but really our largest traffic audiences are in the 35 to 44 age range, followed by the 25 to 34, followed by the 45 to 54. Now, what's interesting here is that the 35 to 44 affluent demographic did not even factor into the top half of our engaged audience prior to this program start. And so what we're doing is we're talking to a younger audience, a younger qualified audience. And that's really important as we think about not only who's coming here, but who's going to live here. Who's going to
come back?
Yeah, who's going to want to come back? That's right, Patrick. So let's just, we'll move ahead again. The next slide outlines the estimated economic impact, the most conservative estimated economic impact. According to the state of Vermont, the research they've done and provided, this number would actually be around just under $11 million. And that's because the average economic impact that is estimated by the state for one person is double what we are estimating as the economic impact in Woodstock. Additionally, this data only takes into consideration one couple staying for 2 nights. It does not account for any families, any kids, any sort of outside activity. So the number is likely 2 to 3 times this in terms of size. This is just what we can attribute again to the program, whether it's gas station, snacks downtown, sandwich at Montfair, it doesn't matter. It's all included in this number. I'm just going to turn it over, I think, at this point to Patrick to talk a little bit about the allocation request for next year. To wrap things up, this is not a short-term investment. And like I said at the beginning, we've talked a lot about the marketing initiative. Marketing isn't really an initiative when we're looking at activating a new audience long-term. It's essentially a cost of doing business. Your audience lives in a different environment. We communicate in a different environment, and we discover in a different environment than we did 20 years ago. And in the last meeting, I brought up a great story. Back when I was a kid, people used to come to Woodstock at foliage every year, regardless of the leaves, regardless of the foliage. They just showed up. Nowadays, you can go on the internet, look at the leaf tracker, and it says, listen, it's a bad year for foliage, so people go to Camden, Maine. We're competing in an environment, whether we choose to or not, that is just fundamentally different. And so the reason why Stowe is synonymous with BT tourism is because they invested in several programs, made a concerted effort, not for a year, not for 2 years, but as a long-term goal. And the success of that program really is the outcome that we see today. So it's built on itself year over year. And I would just encourage the EDC to consider that when we're talking about these things, because it's really not a short-term, let's try this out and see. Patrick, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, actually, I'm going to, just to speed things up. John, if you go to the next slide. So these are some of the additional things that we could potentially do, use my metaphor of windows that we can add to the system, including Joe's to capture information and learn what we need to improve. In literally this, because we now have a way to talk to people, we can do a lot more things. All right, next slide, John. So what we did this year is we captured these 4 categories. But moving forward, we want to definitely look at how do we capture the traffic of people who might want to live here, and how do the traffic that might want to build a business here, bring a business. Next slide, John. Okay. This is really kind of, what I had said earlier. We basically had looked at these as a multiple different grants. Web hosting, web maintenance, social media coordinator, digital marketing program that we set up, collateral, and other opportunities that happen throughout the year. And what I want to do is take those multiple grants and put it into one grant. So the next slide, John. Actually, you can go to the next one. This is kind of repetitive. All right, so this right now is currently kind of the budget of how we see breaking things out. So website maintenance and hosting, Origins does that. That would be 7,200. SmugMug, we're going to take the digital assets that we've put together that Class 4 has set up. We're going to create a space for businesses to be able to grab images and video, for media to be able to grab images and video, and then the marketing group will have its version as well. So that now we'll be able to share all those assets that we built over the last year. Klaviyo is the system that we use to send the emails out to talk to people. And it's extremely sophisticated and lets us do all kinds of tracking to be able to do the types of things that Joe was talking about. The pay-per-click, that's the ads that we do on Facebook and any digital advertising at all. The lead magnet budget, this is, to date, the Inn and several places have been very kind at donating spaces, but we've put some money in for the budget so that we're not always there with our hand out, that we can pay them something, if not full cost, some cost. The restaurant guide, which was wildly successful, at least in my lodging property that we did this year, people loved it. It gave them a way to figure out where to go, where to eat. We want to continue that on a biannual basis. So there'll be one for the summer through fall, and then one in the winter through spring. Then social media coordinator, to continue to do what we're doing with Facebook, Instagram, posting as well as responding to posts. We get quite a few requests for information and stuff through that channel.
Blogs, I think, too, Patrick.
And the blogs, yep. And then the marketing program strategy, that's a lot of what Class 4 does, is all of the thinking and perfecting the audiences and managing the whole program. And we hired them because of their expertise. And they've done an amazing job this year on building the audience that we have now and figuring out who to talk to. And that includes, we want to add video content. The thought here is potentially build some a story about moving to Woodstock, like the idea of a young family moving to Woodstock, tell that story. And one of the things we want to start doing with video is telling stories, because that'll help us to bring people here. And then the blog production, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the Woodstock VT website, which has not really been looked at from a content standpoint in a very long time. And we're going to go through and eliminate blogs that are never looked at, and improve on ones that are looked at, and create new ones throughout the year that will tie to the marketing program. And then we have a contingency in there for any opportunities that happen throughout the year, which there are many things or things that that we didn't plan on, that we couldn't see until we're in the middle of it. So the whole budget, which I can't see, hold on a second. Thank you. Yeah, 158.6. So that's the budget we're looking at. That's the budget we would like to approve. We've taken a pencil to this and really sharpened it out and really cut the fat out of anything that would be there. So if anybody has any questions, fire away.
Mary?
So just to clarify, it would be an annual budget now, or is this for a period of time?
This would be for 2023, and then we'd see where we are at the end of 2023. But moving forward, there needs to be planned for a fairly large budget to continue building the the list and adding the functions and features
This
like
is
Joe would like.
to cover 12 months.
Yes.
Okay, so two more questions. One is, I think there was inquiry at the last presentation about interest in some of the committee members in seeing some of the content. I think that was something that came up, and I don't know if that's easy to do, maybe to send something after the meeting or something like that so that we could see that. I know that was a question. And then I know we don't want to get into the nitty gritty, but I'm sure you've thought about when we're spending taxpayer money, who decides or how do we decide which businesses are featured? And that would be an important issue, I think.
Well, I think the first criteria there is they would have to be a chamber member. Charles and I have talked about this, and we figure we can do 2 businesses a month. And I think we'd start sort of people would, we put a form up and they would apply to do it. And I don't know, we'd have to think about
Yeah, I think the way we talked about doing that, again, there are a lot of ideas. Like last year when we went into this, we thought, hey, listen, this is beyond tourism. We might want to, how do we get people to move here, buy houses, build houses? So we were like, look, let's work with local brokers and real estate agents. And we ran into the same thing, who's chosen, why is, so, I'm familiar. The way we probably handle it with businesses is we do an open forum. Open forum. Businesses could go to a URL that we provide. They could request that their event be featured. If there was room, we'd feature it. I would note that we can probably feature 2 per month, but we can also promote as many as we want through the town calendar, through other resources like that. Beyond that, there's also an opportunity, because we do have a fairly low, we call it a frequency, the amount of sending. This is something we've discussed internally, to allow a business to essentially like send a message through this that is theirs. And so it's like, listen, I'm a business. I want to talk to your entire audience. I want to engage. Maybe you're starting a new business in Woodstock, for example, for a fee or for free, however we handle that. You essentially can take 1 of 3 slots, because we currently have 1 email a month. We could probably send up to 4 in this audience. So somebody could just take over an email, an event.
I guess that would be, I know we have other stuff we want to get to, so I don't want to get into
Yeah,
the nitty gritty.
yeah,
I think the important point would be to
Yeah.
just have a process and to just sort of have a committee that
Yeah.
is deciding it in a way that feels fair to people.
Yeah, the way that I've done it with other businesses is you make the business pay a little bit of money, and that weeds out people quickly. So when I used to do Amex, it was 25% the business, 75% Amex.
I think,
And,
Patrick,
can
let me
just-
just interrupt for a second. I think the purpose isn't to answer the questions tonight. I think because we're not being asked to approve the budget tonight. This is just so
You're right. Sorry.
you'll come back and take Marion's question and come back next month to.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll call everybody, and if you have questions, I'll answer as many as I can and get answers if I don't have them.
You've got my question.
I
And
think
I'd like to hear an answer to that in a few months.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Go ahead.
my question, which I mentioned to you, Patrick, before the meeting, was we spent 105,000 or 100. Well, we spent about 95, I think, of the 110 on the program building the platform, and so I'm just wondering how much of the 77,000, you don't have to answer it now, is building the platform, is expanding the platform versus using the platform. And I just sort of to understand, understand that again.
What the breakout is, yep.
I think we are going.
There's some initiatives there, John. I think.
Don't answer it now, Charles.
Okay.
It's a question to be
It's
answered
just
next.
gone, but write the question down, John.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't
Any
mean to
other
cut you off,
questions,
Charles. I just,
comments? Anybody else that would like to pipe in for any reason whatsoever about this market? Okay, hearing none.
Thank you, everybody.
Great job. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Do we entertain the motion about the budget?
No, we're not voting today.
Okay, go ahead. So the next one, as I understand it, is downtown revitalization. There's really nothing to discuss there. We can go on to EDC initiative updates, community grants. Can somebody speak about that?
yeah, I'll speak about
John?
that briefly. We have 4 or 5 applications. We've promoted it several times. We have our date is January 21st, which is Saturday in 2.5 weeks. I'm waiting to see, the deadline is January 16th. So we'll have the applications. The applications are available on the website. There's 4 or 5 of them. That's sort of the status. That's
Okay,
it.
thank you.
John, quick question. How many last year came in at the last minute, or percentage wise?
A lot. I don't remember because we had pre-applications. So
Oh, right,
it's
right.
actually the other way around. We had 58
Yeah.
and then we went down to 30. So
Okay, all right.
The next item is revolving loan fund. That is something that John and Larry and I have been interested in. And I'm gonna let Larry talk about this because he's really been doing the lion's share of the work and learning more about this. So where is Larry?
We lost him.
no,
He's here.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. Can you speak to Larry, please, where we're at and how we got there?
Well, in the, oh, there it is. I think what we were planning to do was to get some input from the full board on some basic questions that we had, so we get a sense of that, the way the board would like us to proceed. And my guess is, John, that we probably should put this off to another meeting.
well, only because unless Deborah, we have already pushed Deborah's after action review as an example of how to do them off already. So I wanted to at least spend the last 15 minutes on that, if we can then postpone this, unless Deborah, you'd rather postpone again.
Okay, let's do that.
Deborah, do you?
I'm either way. I mean, I think it might be good for us to do it just so
I
we
agree.
can make decisions on what other people need to do with their reporting. But I'm fine if you want to.
No,
but
no,
I
no,
just-
no.
It's timely.
Larry, you
John,
and
I think you should go ahead, Deborah, and then we can.
John,
I would do afterwards.
quick question on the loan fund. Could we do this as a something we send out, a survey that we answer questions and then we can go over it at our next meeting?
Well, you don't know what the answers questions about, because that's what was gonna be presented
Oh, I
tonight.
thought that was the questions there. Sorry.
Larry, it's
So
completely
Deborah,
up to you,
why
by the
don't you
way.
go ahead,
Hold on.
Deborah?
Larry, it's completely up to you. I don't want to,
Oh, no,
if
go,
it's
no,
important-
you go ahead. I think the conversation that I envision anyway is going to take quite a bit of time, and
Yeah,
Yeah,
well-
that's what I was thinking too. Okay, that's fine. Yahoo.
is that all right, John?
Go ahead,
Um,
Deb.
can I get the screen share? Can I
John's
host?
got- Don is doing the screen, I think.
Go ahead, Deborah, you have the
Is that
permission.
you, man?
John, you sound better tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
There it is.
Are we seeing it? Yeah, let
Yep,
me
we're
see if
seeing
I
it.
Yeah,
can-
we're seeing it.
I can move your faces. Now I'm yawning and making a presentation and I'm yawning. That's not good. Okay. Okay, so in the conversation that I had with John, I don't know, 2 months ago now, we were talking about, I wanted to, as somebody who got a grant, thank EDC and show EDC everything that was done, and also make sure that that we all had materials that you could then pull forward to show what EDC has done and what it's about. So we were talking about like coming up with a formula that everybody needs to kind of follow. This one's very visual because it's a visual event and it had assets that maybe other grants don't have. But the basic form is, these are the things that we're proposing that each of the grants bring forward for us to review, which is A, the use of funds, images from the project in whatever way we can so that we can start documenting it and putting on social and putting on our website. Reviews of the project when applicable, if you have community comments about it or something that then we might be able to use in the future, again, to show what EDC has done. Examples of the EDC logo placement, because that's something that we want to, again, start to standardize in a way to make sure that the EDC logo is more forward. I put self-assessment just to have some feedback, you know, about how grants worked and what didn't. You know, challenges as well, you know, and the next steps. There you go. So there you go. So this will not take long, hopefully. The TED Talks are finally edited. They were 13 talks. They're a lot of material to get through and to edit. I personally, I mean, there are a couple of people here actually were at the event. There were 13 speakers. I offered each one 10 hours to work with each one in prep, which ended up being a lot more. And then there were hours in creating it. So I just wanted to show you what the beginning of each TED Talk looked like. But please start looking at them and getting them out as they come out, because it's going to be very exciting. Okay.
I like cleaning. Are you nervous? I'm nervous.
No.
I'm nervous because I do this frequently, but I usually have relationship.
So that just gives you an idea of what it looks like, the quality of what it looks like, and the beginning, and also the placement of our title sponsors, including Matt Old Nut, thank you, Todd, and the EDC, as well as Billings, so that, you know, and again, this comes down to what we were talking about with Patrick. It puts us out there more, right? This was the EDC logo that we had. It's changed slightly where Economic Development Commission is a little bit larger, which I like better. So I think in the future we'll have a better one. But the point is it's going to be on everything and it's going to be written on everything. So that's forward. Some tallies for you. We had 14 speakers, 8 of which were from Vermont, 2 from New England, and 4 from elsewhere. I felt like that was a good combo. You know, it was like about 2/3, 1/3, you know, to really build something interesting. This coming year, I'm putting together a panel of people that are working with me to do the choosing of the speakers and to kind of share the tasks a little bit more. And I'm also bringing in a strategic development person who is going to be, you know, I'm not sure if she's on the license or not, but Marisa is coming on board, and that's going to be fantastic. Please sign up on our website, which is www.tedxheartlandhill.org. And then if you do that, then immediately when they're live, you can come and see them. This was our topic. What is community? Home, Heart, Hearth. This was a wonderful thing that was done by Ink Factory, who listened to all the talks and created this visual of everything that, of all the different talks. And we're going to use this for promotion, which was really cool. It was something that was created as the talks came along. And so that's a pretty cool one. Overall numbers, we had 138 attending. There's 97 seats in the theater, 100 seat in the overflow available. It was interesting. I think some of the comments were, you know, I wish we knew more about it ahead of time. You know, there's things that we need to adjust as far as getting the news out. And I definitely think we're going to be able to fill to 200 next year and then get to TED and get a larger, what is it called? Licensing to do more, where I'm able to, you know, go to maybe even Woodstock Town Hall and create something larger. Our grade from TED, this is from audience who attended, was 94, which they said was like unheard of. So that's a really great thing, that the people who attended really liked it. The overall reach was low, but not too low. 24,000 is not bad for what we had put out. And the interaction rate was really high. So this is something where I'm going to be putting some money into this year to get out wider. Here are some of the comments that we don't have to go through all now, but I'm going to give it to all of you because these are things that, again, when we show all the different projects that we've done, you can use these to say, this is an event that, you know, was really successful and that the EDC helped start. So, the comments were really strong. The couple that were like, good suggestion, which was, you know, that there needed to be more interaction between audience members, and that there needed to be more promotion, both of which I agree. And something to look forward to, we're doing TEDx salons, 4 TEDx salons leading up to September 23rd this coming year. So those are going to be evenings with 3 speakers and more interaction on different topics. And if any of you have an idea, obviously housing is one that I'm really interested in doing. But if any of you have ideas, please come to me, because those will be running all during, you know, through the next year. Again, this is an example of how we showed, you know, Woodstock, EDC, and our title sponsors. They were pretty much on everything because they were awesome. Images that you guys can use. Marion took a lot of these images. And there's Marion there. Hi, Marion. And there's Marisa in the background. And that's her
How'd you get
daughter.
in front of the camera, Marion?
I don't know.
She was helping me stuff the bags, stuff the goodie bags. And there's Jeff. Jeff has an awesome TED Talk that's going to come out within a week. So those are some of the images. Larger screen. This was a beautiful event. Thank you so much to Artistry. This was one of the ones that I thought went well. I mean, except that 2 things that I will improve on next year, which is the break between, this was in the evening, the break between all of the talks and then going to this performance. It was just so, I mean, the day was so dense that people, I think, were overwhelmed, and we only, you know, we're too tired to come all the way there. And there were only 40 people there, as opposed to what this woman really deserved. I mean, John, you were there. They were, and I think,
Yeah, she was fantastic.
Todd was there too. Yeah, she was amazing. Also, Kathleen Dolan, we had gotten extra food and we had purchased TEDx, you know, we had purchased food for all our musicians. And somehow in the moving from one place to the other, you know, the production staff wasn't there and there wasn't any food for them. And I was elsewhere getting something else done. And apparently Kathleen Dolan, you know, got them food, you know, and got everything up and running, and as well as offering us the space. So it was really kind of spectacular. So those are, you know, things that we need to adjust. This is the economic breakdown of the whole event, which shows pretty much all of our, shows everything that we've done. I thought it was going to run around 90 and it was 79. EDC was $25,000 grant. Thank you again. That's down here. The money went specifically into the production in here, this area here, and into promotion. In the future, I think I'm going to be able to get more hospitality rooms for housing. So I think that's something that's going to improve. I think we're going to have more in kind and therefore more ticket sales involving people with getting advertising, things like that. The shortfall is a tough one because I am slowly paying that off myself. But, you know, I think in, you know, doing something over the next year will put us in a better, you know, a better shape for the coming following years. And a lot of the things that we produced, we can reuse that, you know, are not going to be the expenses in the future years. So that's how that breaks down. Thank you very much.
Deborah, quick question.
Yeah.
Are you planning on having it at the same time?
You know, yes, we went back and forth about it, and we are having it at the same time. September 23rd, which is 2 days after the International Peace Day, which is on Thursday, the 21st, and there's going to be events leading up to that. But I think the feedback that I got was we just needed to start marketing earlier. and that there were a lot of people, some people also didn't know what TED, they were like, TED who? And then other people were like, oh my God, we had a TED, you know.
That's hard to
so there-
believe.
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a mix. I also think next year, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have maybe not 13 speakers, maybe only, 10. So it ends a little earlier. It ends at like 4, and that the music and the afternoon thing is right afterwards at the same location. That we still have a morning and an afternoon, but also get it out to the hotels and the B&Bs, so people who are coming to town can, know about it ahead of time and buy either a morning ticket or an afternoon ticket, ahead of time. So I think we're going to fill. It's going to be a different experience next year. But again, I mean, for those of you who are there, I think everything that I got as far as feedback was pretty good.
Any other questions? Comments? John, go ahead.
Thinking about this as a template for, well, sorry, substantively, I was at this event and the music thing and stuff. I thought it was fantastic. And it really surprised me. The things that I thought I was going to be bored at, that I was literally going to get up and leave because I had no interest in. There's a photographer who takes pictures of people doing yoga. I'm not that interested in photography. I'm sorry, Marion. I hate yoga. It was fantastic. And we bought one of his paintings, which is now downstairs in our basement. It was a great event. But thinking about this as a template for post grant feedback, which is partly why Deborah, did this. I think I hope we're going to move into a model based on our last hour and a half of discussion where we're not going to be doing all these grants. We're going to be doing a much smaller number of grants. We need to spend more time on each one, but we're not going to, for 12 months of the year, be doing grant things. We're going to have time to do post grant reviews. And I think in each one, we learn something about what are the kind of things that we should be funding. So let's just to put the idea on, in our minds to be thinking about over the next few months, because we've talked about this however many times, multiple times. How do we institutionalize with every grant, basically going back and figuring out what worked, what didn't work, and what does that inform us about going forward? So, Deborah, thank you for putting this post-action assessment together. And I will also say that the one thing you didn't mention, because you took it for granted, was that the main objective, as I recall it, for giving this grant was that we wanted to create something that would continue. We didn't say how many people should come, whatever, we just said it should continue, and you're planning to have it continue. So at least in the first year, we've achieved that objective. So,
Thank you.
Yes. Todd,
Yeah.
Todd, do you have a question?
Yeah, just more of a comment. I mean, Debbie put on a great event. I mean, there's obviously like a lot that you can learn from it, and anybody who puts on an event like that could learn, but it was a great use of town money. And I think it resonates for a long time. And the fact of the video assets and whatnot, I mean, that's sort of the gift that keeps on giving. And Marion did a really great job. I mean, and Marisa there and everybody, it's just like super pro. To make a light joke, I'm still like, where's the plaque about the African Americans at Vale Field, from a year ago, the reason I voted for that one, sort of stuff like this. So I think like having any template is a good idea, but what you just showed was really professional. And I'm exhausted, not as exhausted as Joe, but that was worth our time. And thank you.
Thank you. I think the other thing is for us to have a Dropbox for things like this, so that there are like the images or any assets from these different grants are, you guys have asked, we have access to use on our site or in promotion of the work that EDC does, so that there's never a question what EDC is up to. I think, the more including the Vale Field plaque.
Deborah, I'd like to say one thing too, which is what I love about doing your TEDx is it's not a local event. it's a national/international event that you brought to Woodstock. And, you know, as that continues, it's just gonna grow and get bigger and even give Woodstock that much more.
National exposure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Please, thank you. And please do share them when they start coming out. I think, you know, for those who weren't there, they were really powerful. I'm proud of them and I'm proud of everybody. And I love the fact that, you know, some of our locals have TED Talks now that are going to go far, you know, I mean, from community to commune, you know, I mean, that's going to go far, you know, or from
Can I make-
commune to community. You
Can I
know,
make
there's
one
going to be,
suggestion? When you
Yeah.
send these out, can you send a little, something that we could post in social media? Because I would put this on my site for sure, with the links for each one that come out. If you do just a little something we can use to post, it would be great.
yes, it's all going to come out through social media as well as an overall email. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah, need a photo. Okay, thank you very much. Deborah, that was great. What's next? John?
I think, I don't have the agenda up on the screen. Wait, I think that was
Yeah,
it.
that's right, exactly. That's why I said
Adjourn.
John.
You ready? I
That's why
make a
said
motion
John.
Second.
to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Adjourned.
Bye, everybody. Feel better, John.
thank you.
John, do you want me to bring you that key tonight or tomorrow morning?
Tonight is fine, actually. Just ring,
Okay.
call me when you're by the front door.
Okay, okay,
Thanks, guys. Just, if you just turn everything
Charlie,
off, oh, Marion, and
yeah.
Survey, I really am.
Sorry, hold on,
I'm
what?
sorry.
What'd
you
you
need to turn, you need to lock the doors.
Yeah, I will do that.
Yeah, particularly the main door out when you leave.
Yep. Okay.
So just
got
so
it.
you know, that's part
It's
of,
important.
that's the part
And
of.
I'll tell you why it's important, Charlie. I mean, you did a great presentation. You're a great salesman. You know, chip off the old block. But I mean,